Ron Mark.
Mr Speaker, I rise on behalf of New Zealand First to take a call, acknowledging that it was the Right Honourable Winston Peters who represented New Zealand First throughout these hearings and deliberations. Going through the report, as I have been over the last few moments, it is hard, Mr Speaker, to find any reason why the committee would not have come to the conclusions that they came to and the recommendations which we support. I guess there are some realities about life today, and if I cast my mind back with respect to the use of social media, in fact, if we consider just briefly where ICT was when I left the House in 2008 and where it is today in Parliament and parliamentary staff need to be applauded for the amount of work that they have done. And I guess that you'd be, as the Honourable Chris Finlayson said, you'd look something like King Canute if you tried to ignore what has happened and the transformation that's occurred within communications, not just in New Zealand but throughout the world, which clearly brings us to the point we are now, where we're considering whether or not social media and the use of it requires further constraints around it, or whether we just need to accept the reality that it is there and just simply review our rules of privilege in order to ascertain whether or not we need to make any changes to them. Reading on page 7, the statement, the first paragraph, we consider the growth and use of social media to communicate about Parliament in recent years to be a positive development. New Zealand First agrees 100%. In fact, it's interesting because we would argue that social media in many, many ways is levelling up a very unbalanced political environment or communications environment. In fact, I probably will remember for a very long, long time the victory speech given by the Right Honourable Winston Peters up in Northland when he stormed to victory and humiliated the National Party. He did say that New Zealand First is a movement that is on the march, and that it would, and rural provincial New Zealand had taken that opportunity to send a message. Much of that victory came down to the use of social media and the ability to get one's message out, despite the fact that mainstream media had a particular way of portraying the messages that one tried to get out. And so what he said at that time was, going forward, New Zealand First has a message to deliver. This is in brief, not word for word. And that we will do that with or without mainstream media. We will go around them, over them, under them, and straight through them. And we'll be able to do that. And what he was talking about is the use of social media and the use of the ability for people to within the constraints, use that alternate means of communication. So it's only natural that that alternate means of communication should emerge within the House, within the parliamentary precinct, and that there should be questions about the appropriateness of it, and particularly around contempt, particularly where comments are made that might be interpreted as having been directed at the Speaker or interpreted as being contemptuous of the Speaker, when in fact they might well have been guidance to the Speaker or guidance to someone else in the House as to what not to be, or as opposed to being. And I guess that's why it's going to be a useful exercise to rewrite a part of the standing orders so that it fits more appropriately. I think there is another point that was raised by the Right Honourable Winston Peters, and I guess New Zealand First has to take the opportunity to make this message right now, despite the fact that we've heard speeches saying that out there on the hustings, we are well used to, and we need to accept that we will come under close scrutiny, that's a given, and that things might be said that we don't particularly like or enjoy, and that media might use, other people, entertainers might use satire, ridicule, or denigration Out there in the hustings, New Zealand First would say, yeah, that's a given. Get used to it. Someone over here used the words harden up. Get used to it. That's part of the job. But the question is, that was over there, that was the ACT. Sorry, thank you, Mr. Simon Bridges, for guidance there. It was the ACT MPs of that. But the question that New Zealand First would like to put on the floor now, and the concern we have is best summed up in this saying: we reap what we sow. And the question is, does the House really want to reduce itself to satire, ridicule and denigration inside the House by allowing the film clips to be used in that way? And I can say, Mr. Speaker, that we have moved and we have transitioned from a time when there were very tight rules around the use of media. In fact, Mr. Speaker, I can remember when this House first proposed, and the Parliamentary Services Commission and the Standing Orders Committee looked at the issue of installing cameras in this House to cover the proceedings. I was here at that time when the media were up in arms and delegations from the media, from the gallery, stormed in on the Speaker to stop what they considered to be an appalling abuse of parliamentary rules and the Speaker's office to constrain and contain how the House was portrayed. And now we stand here and there's something like, 8 cameras in the chamber itself and more above. And I look up into the gallery and there's not one mainstream camera present. Quite unlike the old days when TV1, TV3, Prime TV, Sky TV would all have their cameras up there through question time. Now they have come to understand that what Parliament did and the Speaker of the day approved and the Parliamentary Services Commission and the Standing Orders Committee approved is actually has advantaged them, given them the wonderful ability to download free all the footage they want to use as they want within the constraints laid down in the Standing Orders and according to privilege. That was a positive step forward. Mr. Speaker, do I hear one of those journalists standing up and saying we were wrong, that actually the members of Parliament were right, that the Speaker was right? Not one, but I won't hold my breath waiting for it either. It is just, this report just reflects evolution in communications. It simply reflects the times that we're moving into, and it's a timely, what has happened is there's been a timely review through the Privileges Committee as to where we stand today, where we might go in the future, and what rules, if any, need to be amended going forward. New Zealand First simply says that we reiterate what we said with a view to opening up and broadening the way in which the video footage might be used. Be careful what you wish for. Be careful what one wishes for. Well, if I was to say to that member, don't be a jerk, that's not implying that he is a jerk. That's warning him that other people could see his behaviour. Order.
I think I might know what the member... I was on my feet before the member, so that member will sit down and that member will sit down. Yep. I think that issue and the use of that word has been pretty well canvassed over the last 24 hours, and it will not be used in either a negative or a positive sense towards a member. Ron Mark.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And just to conclude, I'd like to say that New Zealand First does support this bill. We, without being prissy, would just caution about the widening of the rules around use of video footage, because in the long run, with the question as to whether that enhances the reputation of the House or denigrates it, will be something that will only be learned after the fact. We would say walk cautiously in that area. With respect to the rest of the recommendations and summaries, we concur and we will be supporting. Thank you.
The Honourable